Hello, welcome to Economics in 15. Today we're going to be looking at individual economic decision making. We're going to look at two particular angles. One is rational behavior and the other one is behavioral economics. So when we're looking at rational behavior, we're looking at theories developed originally by Jeremy Bentham, and the idea of utility. Utility is the benefit, the satisfaction we get from consumption. But there's a law, which is the law of diminishing marginal utility. So every time I consume, every extra unit of consumption will eventually lead to diminishing benefit, diminishing satisfaction from that consumption. So we have something that looks like this. Our x-axis is the quantity, our y-axis is our marginal utility. So you can almost say a level of happiness. So with every extra unit, they say the first ice cream tastes great, the second one not so great, and eventually the fourth, fifth might make you a little bit sick. So it kind of is a downward sloping curve, and that's also a reason why we have that downward sloping demand curve as well. Now that's the marginal utility. However, if we look at the total utility, that will be the sum of the margins. So for example, if having an ice cream gives me happiness, out of 10, let's say 8 for the first ice cream. For the second one, I get maybe happiness of 5. My marginal utility there will be 5 for my second ice cream. However, my total utility will be the sum of both. 8 plus 5, so 13 total utility. So the belief was that as rational beings, we will make decisions based on what gives us the most satisfaction, and businesses will operate with the mission, with the objective to profit maximize. And that's the idea of rational decision making. Within that, we have something called the paradox of value. The paradox of value is, well, the marginal versus the total utility of a good or a service. So if you think about water versus diamonds, we see that water has a very low marginal utility compared to a diamond. So hence, that's why people pay so much for a diamond in comparison to a bottle of water. However, if we look at someone's life, from the point that we're born to the point they die, we will see that the total utility of water is a lot higher than that for diamonds. Water is something that is essential for our life, and without it, we wouldn't survive longer than, 3-4 days. Whereas we can live without a diamond. So we see that paradox. However, we don't see that when we are buying water or when we are looking at essential things. And that's something to bear in mind when we're looking at the how sustainable consumption is. And if we're looking ahead and we are not maybe paying attention to the damage we are causing to the environment with our irresponsible consumption. So that's the idea of rational decision making. Now we have something called behavioral economics, and the idea was developed a lot by a psychologist, Herbert Simon, and his view was that we have biases, and he focused mainly on cognitive biases such as time, memory, self-control. So time, whenever we make a decision, we might not have time. We might need to make a decision quickly on the spot. So hence it's not the best possible decision. Or memory-wise, we make a decision based on what we remember, and sometimes we don't remember enough. Think about yourself in the exams. How much do you score? Usually it's based on how much you remember. So hence at times our memory is not that good, and we need to train it. Now compare that with the memory of a computer. We can't compete with the memory of a computer. So hence our decisions may not be as good as the decisions made by someone with a better memory or a computer. And then we also have self-control. When we want to stop or not do something, yet we still do it. Or we have a plan, you know, we wake up in the morning and we have a plan what we're going to do. And then towards the end of the day, we don't meet that plan. We can see there the lack of self-control. So these are the ideas that drive behavioral economics. Within that, we also have the works of someone called Daniel Kahneman. And Daniel Kahneman wrote a book, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. And here we have the some biases, such as the one for impulsive behavior. So when we think about buying things on the spot without not giving it much choice, that's when we think fast. So sometimes we do things out of a rule of thumb, you know, out of a habit. So think about all those things they might sell just on the counter as you're exiting the supermarket. You might just buy on impulse. You didn't plan to buy them, but you bought them on impulse. Or think about the difference between the shopping habits of people above the age of 50, families, in comparison to the shopping habits of young teenagers or singles or young couples. Singles, young couples are known to be quite impulsive. They will buy sort of 500 ml drinks, small packaging, whereas families tend to buy large 2-liter bottles, things that they will consume later on, or things that they might cook for the rest of the family. So a mother will buy things for their family, whereas singles, young couples might buy things for themselves. And they might look at the supermarket at a place where they just browse through things and pick something which they might choose on impulse, in comparison to a family that might have planned their shopping list ahead. So here we look at both thinking fast and thinking slow. Someone who planned ahead versus someone who did not plan and just reacted on the impulse. We have another, you know, you can think thinking slow is the idea of when you purchase a house, you know, it's a big investment. So people take longer to do this purchase, and they'll do research and they'll think critically and compare. Whereas thinking fast would be, you know, again, the purchase of maybe chewing gum, or something that you randomly saw on the shops on the weekend whilst you were walking along a shopping mall in Stratford. So we have those two. And again, there are biases that can be exploited. We can see, what do we have? EasyJet or Ryanair. We see how they exploit a consumer bias by anchoring or hooking them with a cheap flight. Yet, whilst they go through the process, whilst the consumer has already invested time and effort, they might add things onto it, and you end up paying more than the price you would have thought. You know, it says £1 or £10 for a ticket, yet by the time you get the luggage, by the time you pay extra to sit next to the person you're flying with, by the time you got you know, some sort of extra, a drink on the flight that was £5, you end up paying a total of probably, you know, £50 or £100 instead of the original £20 that you thought you would pay. So here we see like anchoring techniques being used to drive the consumer. The same way when you look at supermarkets, the bread and the milk will be at the back. So you have to travel throughout the supermarket looking at a variety of other things before you actually get to what you planned to eat or buy. The same way IKEA, for example, you need to go through this whole journey if you want to get to light bulbs. You can't just go directly to the section for light bulbs. You need to go through across different areas, finding all kinds of stuff, pillows and duvets and God knows what else that you end up maybe buying. I tend to buy those things that I didn't really plan on buying. So here we see the exploitation of those biases by businesses. We got also the works of Cass Sunstein and Thaler, and they focus on a nudge theory, so sort of positive reinforcement towards a particular habit, and we see governments using it for a variety of objectives. Positive reinforcement could be, you know, do you see these adverts, not adverts, but marketing campaigns for people to stop smoking here in the UK, where you have a pack of cigarettes, and you have the image of someone who has possibly died or is suffering from cancer due to smoking cigarettes, to deter potential smokers, or to potentially increase taxes or still give the option for someone to buy a product, but just make it a little bit more difficult for them to access that product. You have parking fines. If you pay in advance, you pay 50% less. So that encourages someone to pay early the fine rather than delay it and not pay it at all. So you have these different techniques, nudge techniques, that are in place to accomplish certain goals. And this was the work written by Cass, Sunstein, and Thaler during which they won a Nobel Prize for. Great. So the comparison between both is we need to look at rational behavior, to what extent are we rational, and to what extent can we be exploited through these biases. Another key example I like to give is the use of social media and how we see social media as something that actually is asking things from us. You know, it sends us messages, sounds, and then we have to open the application to see what is there. You know, a little bit like when a gambler goes to one of these slot machines and has to sort of keep pulling this lever to see if he wins a prize. The same way we scroll through our application thinking we're gonna maybe win some prize or see something that might reward us, and that kind of keeps us hooked, that anticipation. Yet little we know that these companies are profiteering the longer we stay on those applications, because they are selling us adverts, not selling us, but they're showing us adverts, and they're charging those companies for the time they're showing us those adverts. So yeah, it's an interesting topic, and diagrams you might be able to use for this are the ones for social cost, private cost, and private benefit, social benefit. So I'll do one here. Have our quantity, have our price, costs, have our demand, our supply. Now, when we look at a social benefit, the demand stops being a demand curve, and we call this the private benefit equals the social benefit. The supply curve here, this is the private cost versus the social cost. So if we think about the production of t-shirts, for example, producing t-shirts has a high carbon footprint. There's certain exploitation in sweatshops in other parts of the world. So the actual cost to society is higher than the private cost that we pay when we buy a t-shirt. So we can put the social cost up there. And we can then put down our points, see how they change. From quantity 1, we should be on quantity 2 instead. So a reduction in quantity, and the price should increase to reflect the extra costs that we're incurring by either consuming, or in this case the producer should increase their costs and reduce the quantity produced, so that it's causing less harm to society, to the welfare of society. So this is an example. You can use the same for cars and the amount of pollution that they're causing on the environment, creating a welfare loss to society. Or a lot of our decisions, we necessarily don't make them thinking about society. We do them in a way that we're selfish about the benefit. So hence you can describe, or you can show the damage or the impact on society by shifting and by breaking the curve into two. One showing the private cost, how much we pay for it, versus the actual impact on society, which is higher, which we're not taking into account the moment we purchase the item or the moment the business is producing, selling the item. Hopefully that should help you with your behavioral economics and give you an idea about individual economic decision making between rational and irrational decision making. Good luck. Until next time.